The night the money first came, no one in the village could explain it. One day, Amina was just another young woman struggling to survive, and the next she was wearing fine clothes, her home filled with things no one there had ever seen before. People whispered her name in awe, and in fear. Because in a place where everyone knew hardship, sudden wealth never came without a story, and sometimes without a price. Amina hadn't always dreamed of riches. She had once been known for her laughter, her kindness, and the way she helped her mother carry water from the river every morning. Life was not easy, but it was honest. Still, deep inside her, there was a quiet frustration that grew stronger each year. Watching others leave the village and return with money, watching her family struggle to afford even the basics, it slowly changed her. She began to feel like life was unfair, like no matter how hard she worked, she would never escape the same cycle. Then one evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in deep orange, an old woman approached her on the path home. No one had seen this woman before. Her voice was calm, almost too calm, as if she already knew Amina's thoughts. She spoke of opportunities, of a way out, of a life where Amina would never have to worry about hunger or hardship again. At first, Amina laughed it off. It sounded impossible. But the old woman didn't argue. She simply smiled and told her to think carefully about what she truly wanted. Everything has a cost, she said softly, but not everyone understands it until it's too late. That night, Amina couldn't sleep. The words echoed in her mind. A life without struggle. A life where her family would never go hungry again. Was it really so wrong to want that? She told herself she would only listen, just to understand what the woman meant. Nothing more. When she met the old woman again, far from the eyes of the village, the air felt different, heavier, quieter. The woman spoke clearly this time. Wealth beyond imagination, she promised. A life of comfort and respect. But in return, Amina would have to give something that could never be taken back. For a long moment, Amina said nothing. Her heart pounded as she tried to make sense of it all. It sounded dangerous. It felt wrong. And yet, the thought of continuing her life as it was felt even worse. She thought of her mother's tired face, of the empty food jars, of all the dreams she had buried. So she made a choice. The next morning, everything changed. At first, it felt like a miracle. Money began to appear in ways no one could question. Amina's home was rebuilt. She wore beautiful clothes. People who once ignored her now greeted her with respect. Her family's suffering seemed to vanish overnight. For a while, it felt like she had finally won against the life that had held her down for so long. But slowly things began to shift. It started with small things. A strange feeling of being watched. Nights that felt longer and colder than before. Dreams that didn't feel like dreams at all. Amina tried to ignore it. After all, she had everything she had ever wanted. Why should she complain? But the more time passed, the more the joy began to fade. The laughter that once came easily now felt forced. The things she had longed for no longer brought her peace. And deep inside, a quiet fear began to grow, a fear she couldn't explain to anyone. People in the village noticed it too. They saw the way her smile no longer reached her eyes. They heard the whispers that followed her, the rumors that grew darker with each passing day. Some said she had changed. Others said she had brought something back with her. Something that didn't belong. Amina tried to hold on to her new life, convincing herself that it was all worth it. But then one night, something happened that she could not ignore. Something that made her realize the truth behind the promise she had accepted. And in that moment, she understood that the price she had agreed to pay was far greater than she had ever imagined. But by then it was already too late. That night, Amina woke up suddenly, her heart racing as if someone had called her name. The room was quiet, but it didn't feel empty. The air felt thick, like something unseen was standing just behind her. She sat up slowly, listening, trying to convince herself it was just a bad dream. But then she heard it, a faint whisper, soft and close, even though no one else was there. She turned quickly, but the room was still. The shadows in the corners seemed darker than usual, stretching in ways that didn't make sense. Amina pulled her blanket closer, her hands shaking. This wasn't how her new life was supposed to feel. She had everything now: money, comfort, respect. So why did she feel this growing fear inside her? The next morning she tried to act normal. She stepped outside in her fine clothes, greeted the neighbors and smiled like she always did. But people were watching her differently now. Their eyes followed her a little longer than before. Conversation stopped when she passed by. It was as if her sudden wealth had built a wall between her and everyone else. Even her closest friend, Zuri, seemed distant. They had grown up together, shared secrets, laughed through hard times. But now, Zuri spoke carefully, choosing her words as if she didn't fully trust Amina anymore. "Are you happy?" Zuri asked one afternoon, her voice quiet. Amina forced a smile. "Of course I am. Why wouldn't I be?" Zuri hesitated, then looked away. "I don't know, things just feel different." Amina didn't respond. She didn't know how to explain something she barely understood herself. How could she tell anyone about the old woman, about the choice she had made? Even thinking about it made her chest tighten. As days passed, the strange feeling didn't go away. If anything, it grew stronger. The whispers returned at night, sometimes louder, sometimes clearer, but never fully understandable. Amina began to lose sleep. Her eyes grew tired, her thoughts restless. She tried to distract herself with the life she had built, buying more things, improving her home, helping her family, but nothing seemed to silence the unease inside her. One evening, her mother sat beside her, studying her face carefully. "You don't look well," she said gently. "All this money, it's good, yes. But you don't seem at peace." Amina looked down at her hands. For a moment she almost told the truth. She almost spoke about the old woman, about the promise, about the cost she had agreed to without fully understanding it. But the words stayed stuck in her throat. "I'm just tired," she said instead. Her mother didn't look convinced, but she didn't push further. That same night the whispers changed. They were no longer soft and distant. This time they were clear. "Amina." She froze. Her eyes slowly opened, her breath shallow. "You made a promise." Her heart pounded as she sat up again. "Who's there?" she whispered, her voice barely steady. No answer came, but the presence in the room felt stronger than ever. It was no longer just a feeling. It was real. Watching. Waiting. The next day, Amina couldn't ignore it anymore. She needed answers. She needed to find the old woman again. She returned to the same path where they had first met, walking slowly, her eyes scanning every corner. The sun was high, the village alive with its usual sounds, but the place where she stood felt strangely quiet. Time seemed slower there, as if the world around it had paused. At first there was no one. Then just as she began to lose hope, she saw her. The old woman stood beneath a tree, exactly as before, her calm expression unchanged. It was as if she had been expecting Amina all along. "You came back," the woman said softly. Amina stepped closer, her voice filled with urgency. "Something is wrong. Ever since that night, I hear things. I feel things. You didn't tell me it would be like this." The old woman watched her carefully, her eyes unreadable. "I told you everything has a cost. But this isn't what I thought." Amina said, her voice shaking. "Make it stop." For a moment, the woman said nothing. Then she slowly shook her head. "It has already begun," she replied. "What you are experiencing is only the beginning." Amina felt her chest tighten. "Beginning of what?" The old woman stepped closer, her voice lowering. "Of the balance." Amina didn't understand. What balance? But deep down she felt the answer before it was even explained. "You were given more than what your life was meant to hold," the woman continued. "And when something is taken beyond its natural path, something else must follow." Amina's mind raced. "I didn't take anything. You offered it. And you accepted," the woman said calmly. Silence fell between them. The weight of those words pressed heavily on Amina's chest. "There must be a way to undo it," Amina said quickly. "Tell me what I need to do." The old woman looked at her for a long moment, as if deciding how much to reveal. "There are always ways," she said slowly. "But they are not simple. And they come with their own cost." Amina felt a chill run through her. Another cost? Before she could ask more, the old woman turned away. "Be careful what you ask for next," she added. "Because this time, you already know how these choices end." And just like that, she was gone. Amina stood there alone, her thoughts spinning, her fear growing stronger with every second. The answers she had hoped for only brought more questions. And the worst part was the feeling deep inside her, the quiet certainty that whatever had started was far from over. Amina walked back from the path in a daze, her thoughts heavy and tangled. The old woman's words echoed in her mind, the beginning, the balance. She didn't fully understand what it meant, but she could feel it now, like something slowly closing in around her life. The wealth that once felt like freedom now felt like a trap she couldn't escape. That evening the village felt different again. The usual sounds of people talking and children playing seemed distant, almost muted. Amina noticed how people looked at her, some with curiosity, others with quiet suspicion. It wasn't just about her sudden riches anymore. It was something else. Something they couldn't explain but could feel. As she passed by a group of elders sitting under a tree, their conversation stopped. One of them, an older man known for his wisdom, watched her closely. "Not all blessings come with peace," he said quietly, not directly to her, but loud enough for her to hear. Amina kept walking, her chest tightening. She wanted to turn back to ask him what he meant, but something held her back. Maybe fear. Maybe guilt. At home things were no better. Her mother tried to keep life normal, cooking meals, talking about small daily things, but there was a growing silence between them. Even her younger brother, who once ran to her excitedly, now seemed unsure, as if he didn't recognize her fully anymore. That night, the whispers returned again, stronger than before. "You cannot keep it all." Amina covered her ears, squeezing her eyes shut. "Stop," she whispered, her voice trembling. But the voice didn't stop. "There must be balance." Her breathing grew faster. "I don't understand," she cried softly into the darkness. This time, instead of fading, the room seemed to grow colder. Amina opened her eyes and saw something that made her freeze, a shadow darker than the rest, shifting slightly along the wall. It wasn't clear or solid, but it didn't move like a normal shadow. She sat completely still, her heart pounding loudly in her chest. The shadow lingered for a few seconds, then slowly disappeared. The next morning, Amina made a decision. She couldn't face this alone anymore. If the old woman wouldn't give her clear answers, maybe someone else could. She went to find the elder she had seen earlier. He was sitting in the same place as if he hadn't moved at all. When she approached, he looked at her calmly, like he had been expecting her. "You carry something heavy," he said before she could speak. Amina hesitated, then sat down across from him. "I need help," she said quietly. "Something isn't right. I hear things at night. I see things. Ever since my life changed." The old man nodded slowly. When life changes too quickly, it often leaves something behind, or brings something with it. Amina swallowed hard. "Can it be stopped?" The elder looked at her carefully. "That depends. Some things can be understood. Others must be faced." His answer didn't comfort her. It only deepened the fear. Meanwhile, whispers about Amina began to spread across the village. Some said she had made a secret deal. Others believed she had brought back something unseen from beyond. A few people avoided her completely, while others watched her house at night, curious and uneasy. Zuri, however, couldn't stay away. One afternoon she came to visit, her face serious. "You need to tell me the truth," Zuri said, crossing her arms. "This isn't normal, Amina. Everyone is talking." Amina looked at her, torn between trust and fear. She wanted to deny everything to protect herself from judgment. But at the same time she was tired of carrying it alone. "I met someone," she finally said. "An old woman. She offered me a way out, a better life." Zuri's expression tightened. "And you said yes?" Amina nodded slowly. There was a long silence. "What did it cost you?" Zuri asked quietly. Amina shook her head. "That's the problem. I don't know." Zuri looked shaken. "You don't make a deal like that without knowing the price." "I thought I understood," Amina replied, her voice breaking slightly. "But now, things are happening. Things I can't explain." Zuri leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Then you need to find out before it gets worse." Amina let out a weak breath. "I tried. She won't tell me everything." Zuri sat back, her face full of worry. Then maybe she's not the only one who knows. That idea stayed with Amina long after Zuri left. Maybe there were others who had heard of such things. Maybe this wasn't as rare as she thought. But deep inside, another thought frightened her even more. What if she wasn't the only one affected? That night something new happened. The whispers didn't come from inside her room. They came from outside. Amina slowly walked to the door, her hands trembling. The village was quiet, but the sound was clear. Soft voices, almost like murmurs, coming from a distance. She stepped outside, her eyes scanning the darkness. And then she saw it. At the far edge of the village, near the path where she had met the old woman, there was movement. Not one figure, but several. Faint shapes, barely visible, standing still as if waiting. Amina's breath caught in her throat. They weren't part of the village. And somehow she felt certain. They were connected to her. Amina stood frozen, her eyes fixed on the distant shapes. They didn't move like normal people. They were too still, too quiet, as if they were not meant to be seen at all. The air around her felt heavy again, the same way it had on the night she made her choice. Her instincts told her to go back inside, to shut the door and pretend none of this was real. But something stronger pulled her forward. Step by step, she walked toward the edge of the village. The ground felt colder beneath her feet. The sounds of the night, Crickets, wind, distant voices, faded until there was only silence. As she got closer, the figures became clearer, though not fully. They looked like people but not quite. Their forms seemed to shift slightly, like shadows trying to hold shape. Amina stopped a few steps away. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. "Who are you?" No one answered. But then all at once she felt it again, that presence. Stronger than ever before. Not just around her, but within the space itself, like the air was alive with something watching her every move. "You came," a familiar voice said from behind. Amina turned quickly. The old woman stood there, calm as always, her expression unchanged. "What is this?" Amina asked, her fear now turning into desperation. "Who are they?" The old woman looked toward the figures, then back at Amina. "They are part of the balance." Amina shook her head. "Stop saying that like I'm supposed to understand. What do they want from me?" The old woman stepped closer, her voice low and steady. "Not want. Require." Amina felt her chest tighten. "Require what?" But before the woman could answer, something shifted among the figures. One of them moved forward slightly. Its shape flickered, but Amina could feel its attention clearly now, focused only on her. Her breathing became uneven. "Why are they here?" she asked again, her voice shaking. "Because what was given must be answered," the old woman said. Amina's mind raced. "I didn't take anything from them." The woman's gaze didn't change. "You took more than you were meant to carry. And now something must be returned." Amina took a step back. "Returned how?" This time the old woman didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked at Amina in a way that made her feel exposed, like every thought and fear inside her was being seen. "There are always choices," she finally said. "But every choice shapes what comes next." Amina felt a growing pressure in her chest, like time itself was closing in. "Then tell me the choices." Before the old woman could respond, a sudden sound broke the silence. "Amina." She turned quickly. Zuri was running toward her, out of breath, her face filled with panic. "I knew I'd find you here," Zuri said, grabbing her arm. "You shouldn't be here. Something feels wrong." Amina looked at her, torn. "They're real," she said quickly. "Everything I told you, it's all real." Zuri followed her gaze toward the figures. At first she saw nothing. Then her expression slowly changed. I see them," she whispered. The air grew colder. "You shouldn't have come," the old woman said quietly, now looking at Zuri. Zuri tightened her grip on Amina's arm. "We need to leave. Now." But Amina didn't move. "They said something must be returned," she said, her voice distant. "I think this is it. This is what she meant from the beginning." Zuri shook her head. "Then we find another way. There's always another way." Amina wanted to believe that. She really did. But deep down, she remembered the old woman's first warning, that not everyone understands the cost until it's too late. And now it felt like that moment had arrived. The figures began to shift again, slowly surrounding the space. Not moving fast, not rushing, but closing in little by little. There was no sound, no sudden movement, just a steady, quiet approach that made it even more unsettling. Amina's heart pounded louder with every second. "What happens if I don't do anything?" she asked, her voice barely steady. The old woman's answer came without hesitation. "Then the balance will take its own course." Amina swallowed hard. "And that means?" This time the woman didn't speak. She didn't need to. Amina felt the answer in the silence. Zuri stepped in front of her slightly, her voice firm despite the fear in her eyes. "We're not letting anything happen to you." But Amina gently pulled her back. "You don't understand. This started with me." The tension in the air grew thicker. The figures were closer now. Close enough that Amina could feel their presence clearly, like a pressure pressing against her from all sides. Her thoughts raced. Every moment of her journey flashed through her mind. The struggles, the choice, the sudden wealth, the fear that followed. It all led to this moment. The old woman took one final step forward. "It is time," she said softly. Amina closed her eyes for a brief second, trying to steady herself. When she opened them again, her fear hadn't disappeared, but something else had taken its place. A decision was coming. But whatever she chose next, there would be no turning back. Amina's lips parted as if she was about to speak, but no words came out. The air around her felt tight, like something was waiting for her to decide. Zuri held her arm firmly, as if afraid that letting go would make everything worse. "I won't let you face this alone," Zuri said, her voice shaking but determined. Amina looked at her, a mix of gratitude and fear in her eyes. "You might not have a choice," she replied quietly. Before either of them could move, one of the shadowy figures stepped closer than the rest. This time it didn't stop. It came forward slowly, its shape becoming more defined, though still not fully clear. Amina felt a strange pull in her chest, like something inside her was responding to its presence. And then, something unexpected happened. The figure didn't reach for her. It turned toward Zuri. Zuri froze. "Why is it looking at me?" she whispered. Amina's heart dropped. "No, that's not right." The old woman watched silently, her expression unreadable. "You said this was about me," Amina said quickly, her voice rising with panic. "Whatever this is, it's mine to deal with." The old woman tilted her head slightly. "Every choice reaches further than the one who makes it." Amina shook her head. "No. That's not what you said before." "I told you there would be a cost," the woman replied calmly. "I did not say you would be the only one to feel it." Those words hit harder than anything else. Zuri slowly stepped back, her breathing uneven. "Amina, what did you agree to?" "I didn't know," Amina said, her voice breaking. "I swear, I didn't know it would involve anyone else." The figure moved closer to Zuri, stopping just a few steps away. The air around them grew colder, heavier, almost difficult to breathe. Amina stepped forward quickly, placing herself between Zuri and the figure. "Stop," she said firmly, even though her voice trembled. "If something has to be taken, then take it from me." For the first time the figure reacted. It paused, its form flickering slightly as if considering her words. But then the whispers returned, louder than ever before. "The balance is not yours alone." Amina felt her head spin. The voice didn't come from one place anymore. It was everywhere, surrounding them, echoing through the space. Zuri grabbed her arm again. "We need to leave. Now." But Amina couldn't move. Something about the moment felt locked in place, like leaving wasn't even an option anymore. The old woman stepped closer, her presence calm but heavy. "You asked for a life beyond your limits," she said. "But a life like that does not stand on its own. It leans on what is around it." Amina's eyes widened slowly. "You mean, my life changed because something else had to give?" The woman didn't answer directly, but her silence said enough. Amina turned to Zuri, fear flooding her face. "No, this isn't happening." Zuri shook her head, her voice unsteady. "I'm fine. Nothing's happened to me." But even as she said it, her voice weakened slightly. Amina noticed it immediately. "Zuri?" Zuri blinked, pressing a hand to her head. "I just feel strange. Like I'm suddenly very tired." "No," Amina whispered. "No, no, no." The realization hit her all at once. The wealth, the comfort, the sudden change in her life. It hadn't come from nowhere. Something had been shifted. Something had been taken quietly, slowly, from somewhere else. And now it was becoming visible. Amina turned back to the old woman, anger rising through her fear. "You knew this would happen." "I knew what was possible," the woman replied. "But the path always depends on the choices made along the way. You should have told me." Amina shouted. "I told you enough," the woman said calmly. "You chose not to ask more." Those words cut deep because Amina knew they were true. She had been so focused on escaping her life, on gaining wealth and comfort, that she never stopped to truly question the cost. And now that cost had a face. Zuri swayed slightly, and Amina quickly held her up. "Stay with me," she said urgently. "I'm okay," Zuri insisted, but her voice was faint. The shadowy figures shifted again, forming a loose circle around them. The pressure in the air grew stronger, almost unbearable. Amina's mind raced. If this was the balance, then it wasn't just about her anymore. It was spreading, pulling others into something they never agreed to. "There has to be another way," she said, more to herself than anyone else. The old woman studied her. "There may be." Amina looked up quickly. "Then tell me." "But understand this," the woman continued. "Any new choice will not erase the first. It will only change what happens next." Amina felt the weight of that warning immediately. Another choice. Another cost. And now she couldn't pretend she didn't understand what that meant. Behind her, Zuri's grip tightened weakly on her arm. "Amina, please?" Amina closed her eyes for a brief moment, trying to think through the fear, the pressure, the growing panic. When she opened them again, the figures were closer. Closer than before. And whatever was about to happen next was already beginning. Amina held Zuri tightly as the pressure around them grew stronger. The figures were no longer distant shadows. They were close enough now that she could feel their presence like a weight pressing against her chest. Zuri's breathing had become slower, weaker, and that fear Amina had been trying to ignore finally turned into something clear and undeniable. "This isn't right," Amina said, her voice breaking. "Take it back. Take everything back." The old woman watched her without moving. "You are ready to give it up?" Amina didn't hesitate this time. "Yes. I don't want any of it. Not if it means hurting someone else." The whispers shifted, softer now but still surrounding them. "Every gain must return." Amina swallowed hard. "Then take it from me. Whatever it is. Just leave her alone." Zuri shook her head weakly. "No, you don't know what that means." "I do now," Amina said, her voice steadier than before. "I didn't before, but I do now." For the first time, the old woman's expression changed slightly, as if something about Amina's words mattered. "You cannot simply return to what you were," she said. "What has been taken and given has already changed you." "I don't care," Amina replied. "I just want this to stop." The figures seemed to pause, their movement slowing. The air shifted again, no longer closing in but waiting. "Then choose," the old woman said. Amina felt the weight of that word. This wasn't just about giving up her wealth. It was something deeper, something final. She looked down at Zuri, who could barely stand now, and knew there was no other path she could accept. "I choose to give it all back," Amina said firmly. "Everything I gained. Every comfort. Every coin. I don't want any of it if it comes like this." For a moment nothing happened. Then the wind picked up suddenly, circling around them. The figures began to shift, their forms breaking apart slightly, like smoke being pulled away. The whispers grew louder, overlapping but not threatening, more like a release. Zuri gasped softly, her grip tightening on Amina's arm as strength slowly returned to her. Amina felt it too. A strange sensation like something being pulled out of her, not painful but heavy. The warmth she had grown used to, the sense of ease and comfort that came with her new life. It was fading. Her heart pounded as the world around her seemed to shift. The fine clothes she wore began to feel different, simpler. The weight of wealth, something she hadn't even realized she carried, was disappearing piece by piece. The figures stepped back, their presence no longer pressing forward. The old woman watched closely. "The balance is being restored," she said quietly. Amina dropped to her knees, breathing heavily as the feeling passed through her completely. When it was over, the air felt lighter. The silence returned, but this time it was calm, not heavy. Zuri steadied herself, looking around in confusion. "It's gone," she whispered. Amina looked up slowly. The figures had disappeared. The night felt normal again. The cold weight was gone. Tears filled her eyes, but she didn't know if they were from relief or loss. "It's over," she said quietly. The old woman stepped forward one last time. "Yes," she said. "The balance has been restored." Amina stood slowly, her body still weak but her mind clearer than it had been in days. "So everything goes back to how it was?" The old woman paused before answering. "Not everything," she said. Amina frowned slightly. "What does that mean?" Before the woman could respond, Zuri spoke. "Amina?" Her voice was uncertain. Amina turned to her. "What is it?" Zuri hesitated, looking down at her hands. "Something feels different." Amina's chest tightened again. "Different how?" Zuri looked up slowly, confusion in her eyes. "I don't feel weak anymore. But I don't feel like I did before either." Amina's heart skipped. "What are you saying?" Zuri took a small step back as if trying to understand it herself. "It's like something changed. Not taken. Not gone. Just shifted." Amina turned sharply to the old woman. "You said the balance was restored." "It is," the woman replied calmly. "Then why does she feel this way?" The old woman held her gaze. "Because the balance does not erase. It redistributes." Amina felt those words settle in a way that made her uneasy. "You gave up what you gained," the woman continued. "But the path you opened does not simply close. It moves." Amina's voice dropped. "Moves where?" The old woman didn't answer right away. Instead she looked at Zuri. And for the first time, Amina noticed something she hadn't before. A faint shift. Subtle but there. The same kind of presence she had once felt, now around Zuri. "No," Amina whispered. Zuri frowned. "What?" Amina stepped closer, her fear returning. "Do you hear anything?" Zuri shook her head slowly. "No, but..." She stopped. "But what?" Amina asked urgently. Zuri looked past her toward the path. "I feel like something is watching." Amina's breath caught. The old woman turned away, her voice soft as she spoke. "Every story leaves a trace. Amina stood there, her mind racing, her relief fading into a new kind of fear. She had ended her part of the deal. But somehow, the story wasn't over. Amina didn't sleep that night. Even though the shadows were gone and the whispers had faded, something inside her refused to rest. She sat near the doorway of her home, watching the quiet village under the early light of dawn. Everything looked normal again. Simple homes, familiar paths, people beginning their day. It was the life she once had, the one she had been so desperate to escape. But now it didn't feel like a burden anymore. Felt honest. Behind her, Zuri sat quietly, her arms wrapped around herself. She hadn't said much since they returned. The strange feeling she described hadn't gone away, but it hadn't grown worse either. It was just there, like a quiet reminder of something unfinished. Amina, Zuri finally said, breaking the silence. What if this isn't over? Amina didn't answer right away. She had been asking herself the same question all night. I think it is, for me, she said slowly. But maybe not in the way I hoped. Zuri looked at her. And for me? Amina turned, her expression heavy but calm. I don't think anything was given to you the way it was to me. But somehow, you were pulled into it. Zuri frowned slightly. Because of you. Amina lowered her eyes. Yes. There was no anger in Zuri's face, only quiet understanding. You didn't mean for it to happen. That doesn't change the fact that it did, Amina replied. Later that day, Amina returned to the path one last time. She didn't know if the old woman would be there again, but she needed answers, real ones this time. The path was empty when she arrived. The same tree stood still, the same silence filled the air. For a moment she thought she might be alone. Then the voice came, calm as always. You came back. Amina turned, finding the old woman standing behind her once again. I need to understand, Amina said. You said the balance was restored. But something still feels unfinished. The old woman nodded slightly. Because you are still thinking of it as something that ends. Amina frowned. Then what is it? It is a path, the woman replied. One that continues whether you choose to walk it or not. Amina felt that answer settle slowly. And Zuri? She was touched by the path, the woman said. Not chosen but connected. Amina's chest tightened. Can it be undone? The old woman looked at her carefully. Not everything needs to be undone. Some things need to be understood. Amina shook her head. That doesn't feel like enough. It rarely does, the woman said softly. Amina looked down at the ground, thinking about everything that had happened. The sudden wealth. The fear. The choice she made to give it all back. And now this, something lingering, something that couldn't simply be erased. What was the point of it all? She asked quietly. The old woman stepped closer. You wanted a life without struggle, she said. But you learned that a life without balance brings its own kind of burden. Amina nodded slowly. And now? The woman asked. Amina took a deep breath. Now I understand that some things are not meant to be rushed. That what we gain should come in a way we can carry. For the first time the old woman gave a faint smile. Then you have learned what you needed to, she said. Amina looked up. And Zuri? The woman's expression softened slightly. She will be fine. But she will remember. And sometimes, remembering is its own kind of lesson. Amina felt a small sense of relief, though not complete. Will I see you again? She asked. The old woman stepped back slightly. Only if you find yourself searching for shortcuts again. And just like that she was gone. Days passed and slowly life returned to its normal rhythm. Amina went back to helping her family, carrying water, working through each day as she once did. The difference was not in her situation but in how she saw it. The frustration that once filled her had been replaced by something quieter, acceptance and a deeper understanding of what truly mattered. Zuri also began to feel more like herself again. The strange presence she once noticed faded over time, becoming less and less clear. But every now and then she would pause as if remembering something she couldn't fully explain. One evening as they sat together watching the sunset, Zuri turned to Amina. Do you regret it? She asked. Amina thought for a moment. I regret not asking more questions, she said honestly. I regret thinking that an easy path would solve everything. Zuri nodded. But you made it right. Amina looked at her, a faint smile forming. I tried. The sky slowly darkened, the same way it had on the night everything began. But this time it felt different. There was no fear in it. No pressure. Just the quiet end of a day. Amina watched the horizon carefully as if expecting something. But nothing came. And for the first time in a long while, that felt like enough.